For staying with us on World Now. For more on the recognition of the state of Palestine and the impact of the death of the Iranian president on the Gaza situation, a professor of conflict resolution, Darren Q, joins us from Belfast in Northern Ireland. Thank you so much for joining us, Prof. Well, the death of Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi is generating different reactions, especially considering the decades-long shadow war between Iran and Israel. What is the potential impact of President Raisi's death on the Israel-Hamas war?
I think that's the big question at the moment, and thank you again for having me, by the way. The Iranian regime seems to be presenting a picture of stability, I think it's very important that we have not seen any blame of any outside actors on the death of the president so far. The outcome of that inquiry that your reporter mentioned will be an important signpost in that regard. But so far, it looks like the Iranians are trying to maintain a picture of stability and to not rock the boat in the region. But the big question will be whether Iranian allies in Iraq or Hezbollah in Lebanon or the Houthis in Yemen will engage in any kind of increased activity. We saw, for instance, the attack of American troops by Iranian-backed Iraqi militias attacking troops in Jordan, American troops in Jordan. So activities like that could be increasingly destabilizing, but it looks at the moment like Tehran is trying to portray an image of stability. And I think that's very important, as you indicated earlier, when you look at the increasing pressure on the Israeli government to come to some sort of conclusion to the war in Gaza and to agree to some sort of broader comprehensive peace process with the Palestinians that includes some sort of recognition of the two-state formula.
Indeed. And talking about the situation in Gaza and that two-state solution, Norway, Ireland, and Spain have already given recognition to Palestinian statehood. And they're saying it's neither against Israel nor in favor of Hamas, but in the interest of peace. How do you see this impacts the war?
I think it's very important, and the timing is very important, particularly when you look at this as happening very much on the backs of an American diplomatic initiative working with the Saudis to try to get the Israelis to agree to some sort of two-state solution. The Americans are negotiating with the Saudi government at the moment. That would include some kind of a package that could include nuclear energy for the Saudi government, which, thinking about the Saudi-Iranian rivalry, is an important part of this whole picture. At the same time, we see members of Netanyahu's coalition government threatening to dart that coalition and increasing criticism of Netanyahu within Israel over the handling of the Gaza war. And then you throw on the back of that these arrest warrants for Netanyahu and the leader of Hamas at the same time. All of these things are increasing pressure on the Netanyahu government to conclude the offensive that is underway right now in Rafah and the increasing number of refugees we see leaving that direction and heading toward the border with Gaza, with Egypt rather, between Gaza and Egypt. If we see some sort of outcome leading to a peace process or a peace agreement in the coming days, then I think the pressure that the Irish, the Norwegians, the Spanish, and others have been adding to this picture will turn out to be very important.
And we've heard countries, talk about a two-state solution, whether they're in favor of it or against it. How exactly does this option work?
A two-state solution? Well,
yes,
this option... Go ahead.
Yes, please. I was asking you to just expatiate on that. How exactly does the two-state solution work?
Well, so there's already the parameters of that on the ground. You see that there is the Palestinian Authority there. Essentially, the question will be how much will some sort of Palestinian governance structure have autonomy over the politics in the West Bank and Gaza? The Israeli government is firmly against any kind of autonomous sovereign unit. The Israelis are much happier with some sort of semi-autonomous entity like they've had in recent years. A two-state solution actually allows a full-fledged Palestinian government in office that has sovereignty over the West Bank and Gaza. This raises two difficult questions. One is the status of Israeli settler encampments across the West Bank. What will be the future of those? But then second, would a Palestinian state be demilitarized? I think that second one is going to be an easier one for the Palestinian entity to agree to, and there would probably be some sort of international oversight of that arrangement. But both of these are things that the current Israeli government is staunchly against, and we may be waiting for some sort of change in government in Israel before we see something like that move forward. We'll have to see.
All right. And what's your take on the request by ICC prosecutor for arrest warrants for certain Israeli and Hamas leaders?
I think this is an important symbolic value in terms of creating pressure on the Netanyahu government to engage in some sort of process like we were just discussing now. I don't think you're going to see anything move quickly in that regard. The arrest warrants still have to move to some sort of indictment process. Neither Israel nor the United States recognize the authority of the ICC, even though the Americans do occasionally support the ICC in a policy sense at different times. So I don't think it's going to change anything directly on the ground other than increasing this sort of political pressure. What will be interesting over the longer term, we'll see how this case influences the genocide case in the World Court against Israel for what's happening in Gaza. We could see those two cases sort of mirroring one another over the coming years. And a lot's going to depend, I think, on what Israel does now in regard to its operation in Rafah, and whether it's able to wrap that up fairly soon, or whether we see increasing refugees moving out of that area and increasing suffering among the Palestinians there.
All right, then. Professor of Conflict Resolution, Darren Keel, thank you so much for talking to us on World Now.